This is the most comprehensive guide to the IELTS exam I've ever posted. Whether you're taking IELTS academic or general training, you learn so much about each section of this test. Today, I walk you through my favorite strategies to help you get a higher score. Let's dive in, starting with the first section, IELTS reading. IELTS reading lasts for 60 minutes and consists of 40 questions split into 3 sections. In the academic test, passages are more academic, while in general training, you read texts you're likely to encounter in your everyday life. For this reason, general training questions are slightly easier, and you are required to answer more of them to get the same score as in the academic exam. To be precise, to get Band 7, you need 30 answers in the academic test and 34 in general training. For Band 8, that's 35 and 38 correct answers, respectively. On our Telegram channel, I asked what your biggest difficulty with the IELTS reading test is, and most students replied time management. Other common answers are true, false, not given, and matching headings questions, and we'll talk about them a bit later. Now, let's talk about your time management strategies. It's definitely a serious challenge to find all 40 answers in just 60 minutes. So let's talk about some strategies that can help you use your time efficiently. The reading test consists of 3 sections. In the academic test, you get 3 long passages. In general training, you may get up to 5 shorter passages, which are nevertheless split into 3 sections. So it's natural to think that you should spend about 20 minutes on each section. However, this strategy is wrong. Section 1 is significantly easier than Section 3. So you should try to spend about 15 minutes on Section 1 and keep 25 minutes for Section 3. If you're more advanced, you may wish to go through your test even more quickly. The key part of this strategy is to avoid spending too much time on any one question. If you're unsure about a particular question, skip it and come back to it later. Remember that each question is worth 1 point. So it's better to answer as many questions as possible than to spend too much time on a particular difficult question. Another important tip is to keep an eye on the clock. If you're taking IELTS on paper, invigilators will only tell you when you have 10 minutes left and 5 minutes left. There will be a clock on the wall, but you need to remember when your reading section starts to know when it will finish. So when this section begins, write down the time you see, because under all the stress of the exam, it may slip your mind. And don't forget about transferring your answers. Unlike in IELTS listening, where you get extra time for that, in IELTS reading, you must finish everything within 60 minutes. What I suggest doing is transferring your answers to the answer sheet after each section. Then you can have a minute break before you tackle the next section, which will be welcome. When an invigilator tells you that you have 5 minutes left, stop whatever you were doing and transfer your answers. If you're taking IELTS on computer, then you can select your answers directly and thus gain a little bit of time. Finally, it's essential to practice under timed conditions and work on pacing yourself to ensure that you are able to complete all the questions within the allotted time, or at least most of the questions. I strongly recommend using the official practice tests. You know, it's pretty difficult to create a test with the exactly right level of difficulty. Unofficial tests may be easier, harder, or simply different. To practice in exam-like conditions, use Cambridge English practice tests. Any recent book from number 15 and up will do. There are several official practice tests which you can take for free online. Some of them are slightly old but still useful for learning the test format. You can find links to all these tests and all other resources I'm going to mention in this video in my IELTS study plan. It's a free PDF guide, which I'll link in the description below. The next difficulty in IELTS reading is that there is a lot to read, particularly if you take IELTS Academic. That's why I'd like to talk to you about the strategies for approaching the passages. There are two main strategies in IELTS reading: text first and questions first. Those who are confident with their English skills and can read the long passage quickly and understand it well may like the text first strategy. If you read the text first and then the questions, you have to go back into the passage to look up your answers. If your English skills are not quite at this level yet, then I recommend using the questions first strategy. It can save you the time and overwhelm. How does it work? When you open a new section of IELTS reading, first read the passage title and any subtitles, as they will help you understand what the text is about. Then, take a look at the question types you're required to answer. Then read the first question. Start skimming the passage until you locate the answer. Slow down, read the sentence or sentences, question and options carefully and determine what the answer is. Then read the next question and continue skimming the passage. This is possible in IELTS reading because most questions come in order. Some don't, but we'll discuss what to do with them a bit later. You know, IELTS reading requires the widest vocabulary out of all IELTS sections, and most likely you won't understand everything. Remember, the most difficult words may not determine the answer. The first time I took my IELTS exam, there were quite a few words I didn't know. That's why I'm saying read the question and then look for the answer. If you don't understand something, but you don't think this sentence contains the answer, it really doesn't matter. If it does, then try to figure out what the possible meaning of this word may be from the context. Sometimes you can do that and still answer the question correctly. Let's chat about a couple of tricks in IELTS reading that seem to be popular but might not be as helpful as they seem. The first is reading only the first and last sentence of each paragraph to figure out what the paragraph is all about. Even some official guides give this advice. While this method might give you a general idea of the content, it's unlikely to help you answer specific questions. Even in tasks like matching headings, the answers often depend on what you read inside the paragraph itself. The next trick is scanning for specific words. This might work if you're looking for a clear keyword like someone's name or a date. In most cases, the correct answers in IELTS reading are paraphrased, so you need to look for synonyms or rephrased versions of the keywords. Scanning for exact words will likely just waste your time. That's why I recommend reading the entire passage while you're answering questions. If you need to find some information again, then you can scan for it. It's also helpful to highlight keywords such as names of people, locations, scientific theories, or dates. If you're taking IELTS on paper, you can underline or circle them. If you're taking it on computer, you can right-click your mouse and select Highlight. We've discussed how to approach a section in IELTS reading, but how can you answer particular questions fast? Let's talk about the strategies for answering questions and different question types. I know, and you know, you'll be short of time in IELTS reading. It can be tempting to quickly read the question or select the first answer that seems right, but don't rush. Take your time to carefully read and analyze each question and answer choice. Correct answers often depend on details, so pay attention. One helpful tip is to look for keywords in both the question and the passage. While it's unlikely that you'll find the exact word in the passage, identifying keywords can help you concentrate, locate the relevant information, and select the correct answer. Another useful strategy is to cross out incorrect answers. By eliminating one or more answer choices as incorrect, you increase your chances of selecting the correct answer from the remaining choices. And finally, don't be afraid to make educated guesses. If you're unsure of the answer, try to figure out which answers are more likely to be correct and select one. It's important to answer all of the questions even if you're not sure of the answer, as there is always a chance you'll get it right. Remember, in IELTS reading, you won't lose marks for incorrect answers. More generally, learn strategies for answering different types of IELTS reading questions. I've often heard from students that they found certain questions overwhelmingly difficult. But when they learned how those questions are built and what to do to answer them, they found out that they can answer them quite successfully. There are many types of questions, so which ones should you start with? I asked our Telegram group what questions they find most difficult, and that's exactly what I think too. The most challenging question type is matching headings. Number 2 is true, false, not given, and yes, no, not given. Number 3 is multiple choice. I have detailed video guides with practice for each, which you can find in my study plan or in the IELTS reading playlist on my channel. Now, we've talked before about how most IELTS reading questions come in order, but not all of them. And it's important to know which ones are which, so you can use the right strategy to answer them. Just bear in mind that what I'm talking about today is the result of my research into official practice tests and my memories from real exams. Although this approach has worked for quite a few years, there is always a chance that your test will be built slightly differently. Let's start with the question types that come in order. One of the most notorious questions is true, false, not given, which is used in every test. You need to say if the following statements agree with the information given in the passage. It comes in order. A similar type of question is yes, no, not given, where you need to say if the following statements agree with the claims of the writer. Generally, the answers do come in order, but occasionally they may not, especially if you get this task at the very end of the reading section. By the way, don't worry about writing anything down. You can download the images with all the question types that come in order and not in order on our Telegram channel. I'll link it in the description. Another common type of task is fill in the blanks, where you need to complete the notes, summary, or table with 1 or 2 missing words from the passage. They come in order. There are also multiple choice questions with 4 options and 1 correct answer. They are in order, but sometimes you need to find 2 correct answers out of 5 options, and those may not be in order. Sentence endings is another question type on our list, where you need to complete each sentence with the correct ending. This is the only matching question that comes in order. Now, let's move on to the questions that do not come in order. The best known and most feared of all IELTS questions is matching headings, where you need to choose the correct heading for each section from the list of headings below. A similar type of task is matching paragraphs, where you need to identify which paragraph or section contains the following information. So these questions are not in order. Instead, what you can do is read the first paragraph, read all the options, find the right answer, then read the next paragraph, and so on. Match all the headings before transferring your answers to the answer sheet, as you may change your mind or you may need to go through your questions twice. Matching information. Quite often you need to match surnames of people to what they did, like in this task. Match each statement with the correct explorer. If you see this type of task, highlight all the surnames in the text. Then you'll be able to quickly find the part of the text where the answer is located. Next, multiple choice questions with 5 options and 2 correct answers. Some of these come in order, some don't, it varies. Finally, the questions at the end of the reading test. If you have a couple of questions of a different type at the very end of section 3, they may not come in order, even if this type of questions usually does. For example, yes, no, not given questions at the end may not be in order. And don't forget to download the images with the list of questions on our Telegram. The link is below. While we've talked about a number of strategies for answering more questions in 60 minutes, it's important to remember that your score ultimately depends on your reading skills. So here are 3 ways to improve your reading skills. Firstly, learn from your mistakes. After completing a practice test, go back and review the questions you answered incorrectly. This can help you identify patterns in your mistakes and learn from them. Maybe you tend to overthink questions or struggle with certain types of questions. Knowing what you need to work on can help you improve. Secondly, reading speed is crucial in the IELTS reading section. The faster you can read, the more time you have to find your answers. One way to improve your reading speed is to read in English every day. Even if it's just a few pages or an article, anything in English can help. For the best results, try reading literature that is similar to what is used in the IELTS reading section. For IELTS academic, scientific articles and newspapers like The Guardian or the BBC are great resources. For general training, read instructions, job applications, and other everyday English materials. Finally, it's important to expand your vocabulary. Learn new words from the articles and materials you read to better understand the passages in the IELTS reading section. While improving your reading speed and vocabulary isn't a quick fix, it's a fundamental solution that can take your English to the next level and help you achieve your goals beyond the IELTS exam. The reading section is hard. The first time I took my test to do my master's in the UK, I was struggling with time. I didn't know a fair number of words, but I still got a band 8. If it's tough, it doesn't mean you can't do it. Today my score is a band 9, but it's still far from being easy. And now it's time for the next section, and it's a great section to get ahead. IELTS listening. Let me begin by giving a quick overview of the IELTS listening must-knows. IELTS listening is the same for both academic and general training students. It lasts for 30 minutes. If you take the exam on paper, you'll be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet at the end. In IELTS on computer, you select your answers directly, so you get 2 minutes extra at the end. Each test consists of 40 questions split into 4 parts. Questions generally get harder as you progress, though some questions in parts 2 or 3 may be harder than those in part 4. In terms of scores, you're awarded 1 point for each correct answer. 30 correct answers get you to band 7, 35 to band 8, and 40 to that magic band 9. Remember that you hear each recording only once, and there are no pauses between different parts of the listening test. The tips and strategies we're gonna discuss next require your understanding of different types of tasks. So let me show you what those are. In parts 1 and 2, you'll hear about everyday topics. Part 1 is a conversation between two people, like a call to a hotel or shop. While part 2 is a monologue or a talk by one person, for example, a tour guide talking about a town or a speech about employee training. Parts 3 and 4 are dedicated to more academic topics. In part 3, you usually hear two students discussing an assignment. And the last part is a university lecture. In terms of the types of tasks, there are only 4. In parts 1 and 4, you're required to fill in the blanks. The task reads, write no more than one word and or a number. I've checked recent tests and it seems that write 2 or 3 words questions are reserved for IELTS reading. In IELTS listening, that's 1 word. You may see a table, a flowchart, or some notes. Multiple choice questions require choosing the correct answer, A, B, C. There may be 3 options and 1 answer, or 5 options and 2 answers. You always get these questions in parts 2 or 3. The next type is a map. You're required to label each part by choosing from a list of options. Sometimes, instead of a map, you get a set of options in the box which you match to a list of questions below. These are matching information questions. And in your test, you get either a map or a set of matching information questions, just one of the two. Now, let's talk about the best tips that can help you answer more questions and some quick wins. I know you like those. One of the difficulties in IELTS listening is time. There is just not enough of it, and it may feel like you have to read, listen, and write all at the same time. But it doesn't have to be this way. IELTS listening becomes a bit easier if you can carefully read questions before listening to the recording. In the test, you are given about 30 seconds to do that. While it's enough for part 1 and maybe 2, in parts 3 and 4, there is hardly enough time to finish scanning the questions. So here is a solution that helped me get band 9 years ago, and it still works today. At the end of each section, you are given 30 seconds to review your answers. Together with instructions telling you to do so, that's 45 seconds. Plus the time with instructions for the next section. You could get 1 minute 45 seconds to read your questions instead of just 30 seconds. And that's enough to read all the questions and highlight keywords to help you find the right option quickly. Use the time for instructions and revision to read questions coming next. And if you're wondering if you are allowed to go to the next section before you hear the instructions to do so, the answer is yes. Once you open the test questions, you can go to any page you like. In a computer-based IELTS, you just need to click on the next question to go to the next section. And don't forget to do that because new questions won't open automatically. As for reviewing your answers, there is a bit of time for that at the end of the test. Even if you read all the questions, when the recording starts playing, there are so many elements in the task. Where to look? Knowing this can solve this problem. All IELTS listening questions come in order. If we have a look at the map again, you'll hear about the coffee room, then the warehouse, staff canteen, and so on. When you are preparing, study the map and try to memorize the objects on the map. There is no need to spend too much time on the questions because you know in which order they come. And remember that you start at the entrance, in our case, in the reception. Similarly, in a matching information exercise, you see a box with options named information and below the questions from 15 to 20. Follow the questions. First you hear number 15, fresh food commercial manager, then agronomist, and so on. While preparing, carefully read and try to memorize the options in the box. The third element of the strategy is to concentrate on the right things. Remember that information is never repeated in IELTS listening. Each option is only discussed once. It's either correct or incorrect. The answer will not change. Once you found your answer, move on to the next question. If you're not sure what the answer is, don't try to figure it out straight away. Mark the question to review and go to the next question. If you miss one answer, move on to the next question and try to find those answers you missed at the end of the test. Otherwise, it's easy to get distracted and miss several answers in a row. Ouch. If you are taking a paper-based exam, underline keywords and cross out incorrect answers. If you take IELTS on computer, I'm afraid you can't do that because highlighting takes too much time. The next question is, can you write your answers in capital letters? So let's have a look at the official IDP recommendation. In IELTS on paper, write all your reading and listening answers in capitals so it's clear for the examiner. However, in computer-delivered IELTS, handwriting is not an issue, obviously, so you should try to write all words using upper and lower case. Basically, what they're saying is, you should try to use correct upper and lowercase letters if you're taking your exam on computer instead of capitalizing all your answers. At the moment, this is just a recommendation, so you can write all your answers in capitals, but you should keep an eye in case this changes in the future. In IELTS writing, though, you must use correct capitalization. Next, don't leave questions unanswered. Make your best guess. You don't lose points for incorrect answers. Spelling counts. You can use British or American spelling. Keep an eye on two questions. Your question and the next. If you accidentally miss one answer, you want to quickly switch to the next question. Well, it's not all about tips and easy wins though. Let's discuss how you should practice to achieve real results. You might have heard practice, practice, practice. And practice is a must, but it's more important to practice smartly than to do a lot of tests. First of all, use the official practice tests. You know, it's pretty difficult to create a test paper that has the same level of difficulty as exam papers. Non-official tests may be easier, harder, confusing, or simply different. That's not good. The best tests are Cambridge practice tests, and you may use any recent book, let's say from number 15 and up. After you do a full IELTS listening test from Cambridge practice, don't just count the number of answers and close the book. An equally important part comes next. At the end of the book, you can find audio scripts of all the recordings. Check each question you answered incorrectly and try to understand why you got it wrong. Was it the spelling, a certain type of task, an accent, or you fell for one of the typical IELTS listening traps when an incorrect answer is deliberately mentioned. Identify and work on your weaknesses. For example, if you notice that you couldn't understand some things while listening to the recording, but the transcript was very clear, this is a sign that your listening skills need a boost. Let's discuss 3 ways to improve your listening skills. The first way requires using a practice test. You may use an older book, it really doesn't matter. There are 2 steps. Take one recording, find its transcript at the end of the book, and start listening. Don't look at the transcript when everything is clear, but as soon as you notice something you couldn't quite understand, pause the recording, find this phrase or sentence in the transcript and figure out what it means. Then listen to it again, trying to hear each word. Once you do, continue listening until you find the next difficult place, and so on. This exercise helps your brain link words and phrases you know with how they are pronounced, thus improving your listening skills. Step 2 is to listen to the same recording without the use of transcript. Hopefully, you'll be able to understand everything this time round. The second way to improve your listening skills is to learn different accents. In your test, you may hear British, American, Canadian, or Australian accent. I've never heard any regional accents, for example, Scottish or Irish, which are quite specific, so don't worry about them. I think it's most important to train your ears to understand British and American accents. In IELTS listening, pronunciation is unnaturally clear. So if you get used to listening to more authentic English speech, understanding IELTS recordings will be a piece of cake. One of the best things you can do is start listening to audiobooks. You can listen to a book while commuting or doing some domestic chores. Listening is a passive skill, so you can work on it even while doing something else. And if you're not yet on Audible, you can get any book as part of your free trial. I'll leave a link to claim your book in the description. Just remember that if you don't want to start paying for your subscription, you must cancel within 1 month, and you can still keep the book. Podcasts and news are great too. You may find it more difficult to watch movies where pronunciation is often really relaxed and unclear, but don't despair. Movies and some YouTube videos require a different level of listening skills than IELTS. You get there with time. For now, concentrate on audiobooks, podcasts, and news. Strategies for tackling different types of questions are really important. Let's talk about them. If you learn how each of the 4 types of tasks is constructed, you'll be able to concentrate on things that matter and hopefully answer more questions. I asked you to vote for the most complex type of tasks in IELTS listening. And we have a clear winner, multiple choice questions. And I absolutely agree with you. Those are tough. Actually, it's worth preparing for each type of task. In those that seem easier, you want to make sure you get the top marks so you have more leeway when it comes to the most challenging tasks. I have lessons about each part which are all linked in my free IELTS study plan along with all the practice tests linked in the description. I really recommend downloading the study plan. Not only does it link to all the resources, but it also gives you a clear list of things to do. And once you start crossing them out and seeing your progress, it will help you stay motivated while preparing for this test. And now let's talk about the next section, IELTS speaking. It will be useful for you to learn about the 4 criteria the examiners use to assess your answers. So let's talk about each of them and what you can do to push your score up. The first criterion is fluency and coherence. Yes, you need to show you can speak fluently. Even if you're not a chatty person, make the most of every opportunity to interact with the examiner right from the beginning. Good morning, my name is Jane Brown. Could you tell me your full name, please? Good morning, nice to meet you. My name is Asia Niat. We know that IELTS speaking is not the same as a real conversation because even in part 3, it's not two-way. The examiner asks questions and you answer them. But starting off being confident and friendly will make the examiner's task easier. Here is the first tip. Extend your answers. What the examiner is hoping for is your ability to develop any topic as fully as you need to speak with hardly any hesitation, not to repeat yourself too much, and of course, to join up what you say with appropriate connecting words and phrases. It's a lot to ask, and your performance can suffer if you don't extend your answers enough, making yourself appear less fluent. In part 1, it's when our answers are too short. Would you like to learn more about the stars and planets? No, not really. It's not a subject I find interesting. Why not? The examiner will ask for more information with a why not question, but it's better to go into detail by explaining yourself first. No, not really. It's not a subject I've ever found particularly interesting. Perhaps because my main interests have always been in the humanities. As I told you, I studied psychology and now work in human resources. And to be honest, I'm not a sci-fi fan. So, one vital key to improved performance is extending your answers. Always try to add an explanation whenever you can, or an example to put what you're saying into context. In part 1, your answers should be about 20 to 30 seconds, and you can talk about yourself. While in part 3, you have up to a minute for each answer, so it's even more important to extend them. However, in part 3, you have to talk in general terms, not about yourself. Listen to this. How important is it for advertisers to tell the truth in advertisements? Well, I guess advertisers should be honest and tell customers exactly what they're buying, because if not, they would lose trust in the product and the company that makes it. Of course, those customers most likely would never come back to buy the same product again in the future. Besides that, there's always the risk of someone suing the company. I think there are laws about that in the USA. I mean, being sued is certainly not good for the lasting image of a company. This is a solid part 3 answer. There are different ways to extend your answers, which we've discussed in this video, and I'll link it in the description. What about part 2? This is the section where you receive a cue card with a topic and are expected to speak for between 1 and 2 minutes. For the best results, aim to speak for the entire 2 minutes until the examiner stops you. This will give you more time to demonstrate your fluency, vocabulary, and grammar skills. And don't worry if you don't finish your talk before the time runs out. What's important in part 2 is to develop your talk coherently, logically, link your ideas and sentences together. Here is a classic structure you can use for your part 2 topic. So our topic is to describe a person who likes to grow plants. Not an easy one, huh? But here's what you can do about it. The first bullet point is to say who the person is. So start by introducing the person. Next, discuss how you know the person. And again, I have a full paragraph about it. Similarly, you can dedicate a paragraph to what types of plants the person grows and why growing plants is important. You can pause the video to read the answer and see how it's organized. I'll also link the video about this answer and how to tackle part 2 cue cards when you don't know what to say. Now, the next tip to improve your fluency and coherence score is to use pauses and time to think phrases. We're talking about answering lots of questions. Some of these, especially in part 3, may not be so easy to answer without pausing for a moment to gather your thoughts. How long is a pause in IELTS? That's an important question. Examiners work on a 5-second silence. In part 2, for example, a 5-second silence can prompt the question, "Is there anything else you tell me about this?" In part 3, a pause to think for a moment is perfectly natural. That question we just looked at about truth in advertising is a good example of that. It began with a simple, "Well, I guess." But you can also say a little more, a phrase that will not only give you some time to think, but also impress the examiner with your skill at using expressions that keep the dialogue flowing. Here are some examples. To be honest, well, to tell you the truth, in my opinion, I guess, if you ask me. Others make a comment on how much you know about the topic. This is not something I know a lot about, but I've never given this very much thought, but I've never thought about that before. All these phrases sound perfectly natural. They're part of the ways we keep conversations going. You know, an examiner told me that test takers often overuse one phrase in these situations. This is not a good idea. Learn and feel comfortable with several of these time to think phrases. By the way, can you guess what the most overused phrase is? That's an interesting question. No problem using it once, but once is enough. And try to say it in a situation where the question is, interesting. The second skill examiners assess is your lexical resource, or put simply, vocabulary. According to the IELTS band descriptors that examiners use, you need a wide range of vocabulary and some less common and idiomatic words and phrases. On top of that, you need to be able to paraphrase, to explain things in your own words. I have several tips to help you when it comes to lexical resource. My first tip is to use words you know, which really means don't try to sound like a dictionary. Don't try to impress the examiner with words you don't often use in conversation. Keep it simple. That doesn't mean not to use specialized vocabulary, but don't sound too technical. It will give the impression that you've memorized what you're saying, and examiners don't want to hear that. Here's an example. Where do you work? As a geophysicist working for an international exploration company, I'm mainly involved in carrying out seismic wave measurements, which means transmitting the output from a... This sounds like a memorized answer. Be natural. Make sure the examiner is following you, like this. I'm a geophysicist. I collect data on different types of what we call seismic waves, like kind of earth movements. And with that data, we can know what's under the surface, like oil or gas. That's how people talk. The language is simpler, but the answer is so much better. Let's go on to idiomatic language. Idioms can be tricky. Of course, if you know and feel comfortable using some idiomatic expressions, feel free to use them. For example, You might have learned the expression under the weather to mean not feeling well. If you're sure you can use it in the right place and at the right time, go ahead. How about if you're asked to describe a time when you were very busy in part 2 and you say this? It was this time last year, in fact. I was studying so hard for my final exams at university, but I'd also been feeling a bit under the weather with some kind of flu. This is fine, but here's a word of warning. An examiner friend of mine told me of a case where a test taker had used this same expression about 5 times. Can you guess one of the most overused idiomatic expressions? In a nutshell, which means in short or to sum up. Please don't overdo it. The same could be said for expressions that have become cliches. Something that has become so overused with time that it no longer has an impact and even might sound old-fashioned. Do we say these days things like, as old as the hills, or it trains cats and dogs? Not really. At least if the examiner asks you about the weather in your country, it's better to say that you often have tropical downpours in summer. No cats, no dogs. Right, let's move on. One of the worst things that happened to me in the speaking test is when I forgot the word I needed in the middle of the sentence. It feels quite embarrassing. What's the solution? Try not to get stuck. Look for a simple paraphrase. Imagine in a part 2 topic, describe your ideal home, you could say this. Yes, it would have all along the front of the house a place where you can sit and look at the view. What's the missing word? Veranda, or maybe porch. But here it's a place outside where you can sit. A short description. We could also use a word we know is not the right one, but has some similarities. A kind of balcony on the ground floor. The next skill is your grammar. How to improve your performance here? Examiners assess if you use a variety of grammatical structures and how accurately you do this, or how often you make mistakes. And we all make mistakes. Very fluent speakers, even native speakers, make mistakes we usually call slips. Here is a very common one. There's a lot of opportunities. When you're starting to say there is, you may not yet know what you're going to say next. And as a result, you end up with a sentence like this. It's a slip. If you do notice you've made a mistake, don't be afraid to correct it straight away. I've been to Paris last year. That's when I went there. At the same time, there's no magic wand to avoid mistakes. I still make them occasionally. Don't let the fear of making mistakes paralyze you. Expressing your thoughts is more important. Examiners also assess how many complex structures you use. By complex, I mean conditional sentences with if, modal verbs such as may, might, could, as well as the passive voice, and many other structures. I don't think you really have time to think, what grammatical structure should I use here? Let me add a past perfect tense. So use what you know. Now for the 4th category, pronunciation. The truth is, most of us will always speak English with an accent. Sometimes a very noticeable one, sometimes not. This is nothing to worry about. The examiner wants you to speak clearly and be easily understood, even though you may mispronounce an occasional word. What about speed? You don't want to speak too slowly, but that's often not something you can help. Or too fast. Don't think that if you just keep on talking and talking and talking, you're going to get a high score. No, articulate words clearly. A third important aspect, is how you express meaning, feelings, and opinions through stress. The way you emphasize certain words to express what you want to say. Every language has its own stress patterns. And one way to sound English, if you like, is to imitate those patterns. One problem you may recognize is speaking in a kind of monotone. If your voice is quite flat, never going up or down too much, and not stressing the key words. Let's take a simple example. Listen to this. Notice which words are stressed. Does a student slow down a little at any point? It was in my last year at school, and I was chosen to give the graduation speech in front of my classmates, teachers, and parents. Maybe it sounded a little like this. The words in capitals are stressed, and the dots between words mean slowing down a little. Articles and prepositions are not pronounced as clearly as the words that carry the main meaning. You may not feel confident doing this, and it may feel like you are doing too much or acting. And you know, IELTS speaking test is a performance, and you should practice for it to rehearse just like actors. It's important that you study model answers and practice answering typical questions from all three parts of the test. It's a great idea to record your test practices and listen to yourself, or work with a speaking partner. Here is how you can find one. If you're on Telegram, we have hundreds of students looking for partners every month. Just open your app, search for Fast Track IELTS, click in the top right corner, and search for #partner. We publish a new post every month, and that's a great place to connect. And at the top of the channel, you can see recent questions for your practice. The single best thing you can do to improve your speaking skills is speaking. Having a partner is great, but just finding 10 or 15 minutes a day to practice on your own is already very helpful. And now it's time to turn to IELTS writing. I've kept the best till last. So we're going to look into task 2 first, because it's virtually the same task for academic and general training. And then we address task 1. The task 2 essay tests if you can write in English, you might say. And indeed, your vocabulary and grammar determine half of your mark. Examiners also assess your ability to organize and develop your ideas according to the conventional academic style you would have to use when you study in English. That's what task response is all about, as well as coherence and cohesion, the other 50% of your mark. To be clear about what you're expected to do, let's look at a task 2 sample. So this topic is from the Cambridge practice tests. Nowadays, many people choose to be self-employed rather than work for a company or organization. Why might this be the case? What could be the disadvantages of being self-employed? Give reasons for your answer and include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. Write at least 250 words. There are 5 different types of IELTS Task 2 questions. Our example is the 2 direct questions type. We have an opening statement followed by 2 questions. What about the other types? Look at how we can rewrite parts of our example essay to create more question types, advantages and disadvantages. Nowadays, many people choose to be self-employed rather than work for a company or organization. Do the advantages of being self-employed outweigh the disadvantages? This task looks similar to our sample essay, but here the idea is to just compare arguments in favor or against a statement. 2 views and your opinion. Nowadays, many people choose to be self-employed. Some think being self-employed brings many benefits, while others believe it is too risky. Discuss both these views and give your own opinion. A very common Type 2 task. It looks a little more complicated because you have to address 2 points of view and give your own opinion. Opinion essay. It is better to be self-employed rather than work for a company or organization. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this statement? Another popular type which asks for your opinion while looking at both sides of the argument. Problem solutions. Work-related stress is now a problem in many countries around the world. What are some of the factors that cause this stress and how can it be reduced? Here, I changed the topic to make the example clearer. This double question task asks you to describe the causes of a problem and offer solutions. You have 40 minutes to complete task 2. That's not a lot of time. That's why it's so vital to know where you're going, to have a very clear idea of how to develop the essay. No matter which of the 5 possible essay types comes up in your exam, it's better to keep to a 4-paragraph answer. There may be times when you can add an extra paragraph. I'm not saying not to, but let's look at the classic 4-paragraph model. Paragraph 1, outline the task and your aims. Paragraphs 2 and 3 cover the main arguments you're presenting. Paragraph 4, state your conclusions. The secret of task 2 is not to overcomplicate your life. That applies not only to format but also to the content. Look at these preparatory notes for our topic. Reasons: potential to earn more. Flexibility: working hours, holidays, vacation. Disadvantages: financial uncertainty, more responsibilities, higher level of stress. We see just 2 reasons why. That's enough. 3 disadvantages are mentioned, yes, but notice how the first 2 are linked to the third. Both financial issues and added responsibilities can lead to stress. In other words, keep it relatively simple, but make meaningful connections. Relevance is a big part of your score. You need to answer the question. No matter what type of question this is, what you must do in the first paragraph is outline the topic and your aims. So here is paragraph 1. An increasing number of people today opt to work for themselves instead of having a job. This choice has a number of benefits and drawbacks which will be discussed in this essay. Notice how paraphrasing is used. Look again at the question and how we can rephrase it. The first sentence is similar to the topic sentence. Nowadays, many people choose to be self-employed rather than work for a company or organization. Why might this be the case? These are our benefits. What could be the disadvantages? These are our drawbacks. You're also telling your reader, the examiner, where you're going. Now, a little quote from a former IELTS examiner. If the question asks for your opinion, remember to state it in the opening paragraph. Now, paragraph 2. Present the benefits of being self-employed. Let's look more closely at the structure of this paragraph. The first sentence is often called the topic sentence. It states the main point of the paragraph. Some of the most common reasons for self-employment are the income and lifestyle that it may provide. We need to give examples and explanations. So sentence 2 goes into more details with some concrete examples of the benefits. Unlike employees, whose responsibilities and income are determined by their employers, people who work for themselves are free to implement their ideas as quickly as they can, and they receive all the revenue. The next sentence explains what that can mean in terms of income. That means that self-employed people can potentially earn much more than those with similar skills and experience who work for a salary. And sentence 4 states the same in terms of freedom. Moreover, not having a boss means that people can choose their own working hours and number of holidays, among other things. The last sentence has a very general example of the reasons why self-employment is becoming more popular and summarizes this paragraph. Not surprisingly, more and more people are leaving the safety of a salary job to become self-employed. The pattern of topic, example, explanation gives a coherent paragraph. In my courses, we look much deeper into how to develop your ideas, how to extend them, and give examples examiners are looking for. But now, let's have a look at the third body paragraph. This paragraph looks at the disadvantages. 6 sentences, a little longer, but again we can clearly see the topic, example, explanation sequence. Sentence 1 introduces the topic. Despite the obvious appeal, being self-employed is riskier than working for someone else. The next sentence presents the first risk involved. One of the risks is financial uncertainty. This is explained in the next sentence. Entrepreneurs and freelancers are not guaranteed a certain level of income, nor are they eligible for a pension, paid holidays, or sick leave. The next sentence presents another drawback. The workload may be higher too. Again, let's explain what this means. Unlike employees who can specialize in one function, the self-employed are responsible for all of the business operations, from attracting clients to delivering products or services to preparing their financial accounts, to name a few. And the final sentence of the paragraph links the 2 disadvantages to other negative consequences. The multitude of issues that self-employed people have to manage may cause them more stress and anxiety than full-time employees tend to experience. And now the final paragraph, which offers a short 2-sentence conclusion. To conclude, more and more people are becoming self-employed, choosing the flexibility and unlimited potential that this career path provides. This is a summary of the reasons, now the disadvantages. On the downside, these people are not guaranteed any income and must take full responsibility for themselves. By the way, you can download this full sample answer via the link in the video description. Now, think for a moment. By changing the type of question, do we also change the paragraph structure? No, we don't. We still have the same 4 paragraphs. Now, out of the 4 assessment criteria, 2 of them, task response and coherence and cohesion, are closely connected to what we've been looking at so far today. In task response, the examiner wants to see if you've answered the question in full and developed your essay with relevant, extended, and supported ideas. Paragraphing and links within and between sentences, which create this logical sequence of ideas, will help you achieve a high score in coherence and cohesion. All these criteria will work through in depth in my courses, so you learn exactly what examiners are looking for and how to write essays for each type that adhere to these requirements. I'll leave the link to the courses in the video description if you'd like to check them out. Now, let's get to the next category, lexical resource or your vocabulary. The examiner is looking for a good range of vocabulary, which includes what they call less common items. This can mean words or combinations of words that have a precise meaning in a given context. Look at this from paragraph 2 again and notice the sophistication of the word combinations. The adjective noun of financial uncertainty, the verb noun phrase of not guaranteed a certain level of income, and the adjective preposition of are not eligible for. Examiners are not looking for some big fancy words from you, but they do look at how you use words and how you combine them to convey precise meaning. Let's talk about your grammar, or grammatical range and accuracy, as it's called in IELTS. A good mix of complex sentences with some simple ones where appropriate is the key. Notice how in our sample essay, in the third paragraph, there are two simple sentences which introduce two of the main disadvantages. One of the risks is financial uncertainty. The workload may be higher too. They're both followed by complex sentences explaining each statement in more detail. Don't suppose that a simple sentence should be avoided. They can be very effective. The examiner is looking at your ability to write accurate complex sentences. And they don't need to be so complex. Use cohesive links such as although to join two clauses together in one sentence. Give examples or explanations through conditional sentences if. Where appropriate, use the passive voice. These are some of the grammatical features that will guarantee a high band score in your grammatical range and accuracy. And this sentence from the essay is actually quite a complex sentence with 5 clauses, and you don't have to go to this level of complexity to achieve band 7. So far, I've shown you the 4 main criteria examiners use to assess your essays. But there are more requirements in each of them that we touched on today. So to succeed in your exam, I suggest that you should learn about each requirement and particularly about the signs of band 5 or band 6, or in other words, the common mistakes that are noted in the IELTS descriptors and how to avoid them. You should also learn about each of the 5 types of task too and how to answer them. And how to write, what to write about in each paragraph of your essay, particularly how to develop your ideas in your body paragraphs. And if you'd like to learn all this information in one place and study it step by step, check out my IELTS preparation courses, which include Writing Task 1, 2, and IELTS Speaking. They're linked in the description, along with the sample answer from today's lesson, which is free to download. Okay, task 2 is very much the same task for both academic and general training students, which is not the case with task 1. So right now, we're going to look into academic task 1, describing charts, maps, and diagrams. General training students, please click on the next chapter in the video timeline to go to your task, writing letters. Let's take an example from Cambridge IELTS 16. The charts below show the changes in ownership of electrical appliances and amount of time spent doing housework in households in one country between 1920 and 2019. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Write at least 150 words. Task 1 assesses our ability to write a report summarizing data presented in a number of possible ways. The question never varies, never. The idea then is for you to find the key elements in the information. Above all, ask yourself, what is this really all about? Is there a key factor or some pattern to it all? Your answer to this question is absolutely essential if you want to get a high score in task achievement. The first of the 4 criteria examiners assess. You can find it in the IELTS band descriptors, the document that lists all the requirements for each criterion and each band score. These band descriptors can be a bit of a mystery sometimes. For example, you'd have to be an IELTS examiner to know what a band 9 in task achievement really means when it says fully satisfies all the requirements of the task. But for lower bands, notice the word overview. Band 7 presents a clear overview of the main trends, differences, or stages. Band 6 presents an overview with information appropriately selected. Band 5 presents detail mechanically with no clear overview. Band 5 tells us where some test takers go wrong. They jump in too fast and just describe what they see. There is very little to no attempt to interpret it. Have a good look at the task again. What overview could we give here? What's the main thing you've learned? There is a fairly obvious connection between the two charts. Can you see it? The more appliances at home, the less time spent on cooking, washing, and cleaning. So in the report, our first sentence presents the task. You can do this by paraphrasing the task sentence. Our second sentence is our overview. Here is a possible version. The two charts provide data on the percentage of families in an unnamed country that possessed labor-saving devices together with the average time spent weekly on domestic chores over a 100-year period. The data reveals a clear relationship between the growth in ownership of such devices and the decreasing amount of time devoted to household tasks. Remember how important it is to also summarize what we see and read using synonyms. 3 things stand out here. The first is, yes, the synonyms. To achieve a high score, not only in task achievement, but also lexical resource, you need to paraphrase. So, households become families. Electrical appliances are labor-saving devices. Time spent can be time devoted. Ownership changes to the verb possessed. And the charts no longer show, they provide data on. Secondly, notice in this first part how general everything is. No figures, no raw data yet. That's an important point to keep in mind. Wait until the second and third paragraph to give out the details. The third point is the overview. Sentence 2. It shows that you have understood what the graphic data is essentially all about. Right, let's move on to another task descriptor and look at lexical resource or your vocabulary. The examiner wants to see how well you can use words to express very precise meanings. The examiner is also on the lookout for uncommon words that are perfectly appropriate in the context, but not the usual common words. This shows your range of vocabulary, how wide and deep it is. Another important aspect is how you can combine words together in a natural, accurate way. We call this collocation. How words go together, such as do your best or make a mess. And errors? Well, in the descriptors, it does point to inaccurate spelling and errors in word formation that would not help you obtain a really high band score. But then again, at band 7 and 8, and to some extent even 9, some inaccuracies are tolerated. We also have, of course, synonyms to vary our vocabulary. And now let's try and write some sentences. I want to be very precise to show my range and depth of vocabulary and to use some uncommon words if possible. Let's go back to our first domestic appliances chart. What do you notice? The percentage of homes possessing refrigerators grew dramatically after they were first introduced in 1920, climbing to 50% ownership in just 20 years and to 90% by 1960. By the year 1980, the peak of 100% was reached, a figure that has been maintained throughout the remainder of the period surveyed. Vacuum cleaners were also found in every home, but from the year 2000 onwards, after having risen steadily from 30% in 1920 to 90% in 1980. However, by 2020, only 3/4 of all homes possessed a washing machine. Ownership of this appliance rose gradually from 40% in 1920 to 70% in 1960, and despite suffering a slight fall over the following 20 years, have maintained a steady growth since. A lot of increases and decreases. So we need to offer a range of synonyms. We have the verbs grow, climb, rise. They collocate with adverbs dramatically, steadily, gradually. And the nouns peak, fall, growth, which collocate with to reach a peak, a slight fall, steady growth. If there is no change, neither up nor down, you can use the verb maintain. Remember too that you must be accurate with data and vary how you refer to it whenever possible. Here we see, for example, not only percentages but also fractions, as in 3/4 of all homes instead of 75%. Similarly, 25% is 1/4, 1/4, or 1 in 4. For example, 1 in 4 people. 33% is 1/3 or 1 in 3. 50% is half. 66% is 2/3 or 2 in 3. I know that task 1 requires a lot of specific words to describe the charts and maps which we don't use every day. That's why for my courses, I even created a vocabulary for task 1, where you can learn the essential words and see examples of how to use them in task 1 answers. So if you have some time before your exam, know that learning vocabulary for task 1 definitely helps. And now let's change the topic and the type of task as well. Most of us think of grammar when we learn another language. We want to get it right. And the examiner is looking at our range of structures, how complex they are, as well as noticing errors. If our sentences are pretty much error-free and complex, we're looking at band 8 or 9. At band 7 will include some minor errors, but also show a good control of grammar and punctuation. So let's look at this in the context of a task 1 showing maps or plans. These are interesting because, above all, they clearly illustrate change. And in the example we're going to look at, compare the point in the past with one in the future. So first, take a good look with me at the question. The diagrams below show the site of a school in 2004 and the plan for changes to the school site in 2024. And we see two maps, 2004 and 2024. What are the major changes you see here? Have these changes already happened? No, they're planned for the future. And when the task was written, 2024 was still future. So you need to show different ways of describing future events. Student numbers are predicted to rise to over 60% from 600 in 2004 to 1,000 by the year 2024. To accommodate this increase, the path that joins the main entrance to the sports field will be shortened, allowing the two existing school buildings to be linked. Additionally, on the site where the sports field currently stands, a third school building is to be constructed, together with a second car park to the right of this new teaching area. Connecting this car park to the main entrance will be a new road, which will pass along the south side of the existing school buildings. Meanwhile, the sports field will be relocated to the other side of this new road, directly south of the second car park. We can use several verb forms to talk about the future. The future simple, will be, will pass along. There are also a lot of passive structures because we are emphasizing changes that will be made, and it's not important who will make them. Will be shortened, will be relocated, the passive voice. But there are also verbs in the present when we know that something has already been planned, are predicted to rise, is to be constructed. On to our final criterion, coherence and cohesion. Your answer is coherent if it's logically organized. That's your structure, your paragraphs. Your answer is cohesive if your sentences are linked together and there is a smooth transition from one idea to the next. Let's have a look at a diagram from Cambridge IELTS 16. The diagram below shows the process for recycling plastic bottles. One issue here perhaps is our overview. With this type of question, it's important to point out the overall purpose of the process and the key stages. The diagram illustrates a recycling process, describing a series of 9 stages through which used plastic bottles are remanufactured as brand new plastic items, such as pans, bags, and containers, which eventually, in turn, will likely be recycled themselves. Describing the steps involved can be simply sequential, using words like first, then, and so on. But it's also good to show how the steps in the process are linked in terms of consequence. First, plastic bottles are placed in specified recycling bins, from which they're collected and then sent to recycling centers for sorting. This sentence covers the first 2 stages and the beginning of the third, simply linked by first, from which, and then. To show the reason behind the sorting process, stage 3, and how that leads to stages 4 and 5, we have this. Once the bottles suitable for recycling have been selected, they're compressed and converted into large blocks that are subsequently sent through crushing machines. This sentence explains why stage 5, crushing, is necessary. The crushing process is necessary to produce pieces that are sufficiently small to be later turned into plastic pellets. So this one connects what happens after crushing to the making of the plastic pellets. Before that, however, the crushed plastic is thoroughly washed. As you might have noticed, we have no conclusion, although it's really important to include an overview near the start of the answer to show that you really understand what it's all about. This was task 1 for academic students. Now let's look at task 1 for general training students, writing a letter. The idea behind the task 1 is to see how well you can communicate in English in different situations, and how well you can adapt your communication style to a particular situation at hand. And here lies one of the major difficulties. To show you what it is, we need a task. Here is one. Your next door neighbor likes to listen to music late at night. Because of the loud music, you often lose sleep. Write a letter to the building manager. In your letter, describe the situation. Explain the problems it's causing you. Offer at least one solution. Write at least 150 words. Remember that you'll be penalized if your answer is too short. Try to write around 170-190 words. A slightly longer answer is fine too, but it takes more time to write. So if you're aiming at a band 6, 7, or 7.5, it's better to keep it under 200 words. You do not need to write any addresses. Begin your letter as follows. Dear, the first question to ask is, who are you writing to? What we write and the ways we write things change according to who we are writing to. You may need a formal writing style when you're writing to a business or a newspaper or a person in their official capacity, like a building manager. Or an informal writing style when you're writing to a friend. Somewhere in between, we can talk about semi-formal style, which is less formal but not quite informal. For instance, letters to your colleague at work or your neighbor are semi-formal. In our case, we are writing to the building manager. So this is a formal situation, right? The second question is, what are you writing about? We always have 3 bullet points to cover. In this case, describe the situation, explain the problem, and offer, or shall we say, suggest a solution. Officially, these 2 elements, the what we must write and the who to, are called purpose and tone. To achieve a high band score, we really must handle both well, and a lot of students find it hard to do. If we have a look at the IELTS band descriptors that examiners use to assess your answers, I'll link it below. We see 4 criteria and requirements for each band score. So here is what it says. Band 8. All bullet points are clearly presented and appropriately illustrated or extended. So you need to extend your bullet points. Band 7. The letter presents a clear purpose. The tone is consistent and appropriate to the task. Band 6. The purpose is generally clear. There may be minor inconsistencies in tone. Band 5. All bullet points are presented, but one or more may not be adequately covered. The purpose may be unclear at times. The tone may be variable and sometimes inappropriate. If the purpose of your letter is unclear, or if the tone is inappropriate, let's say formal instead of informal or vice versa, that's a band 5. Clearly, the purpose and tone are very important. But I know that when you're learning English, you may not feel if something is formal or informal. I'll tell you what we can do. Let's go back to our sample task, writing to the building manager about that noisy neighbor. And I'm going to give you some choices, alternative extracts from the different parts of the letter. And you choose which alternatives are more appropriate to fit the purpose and tone of our answer. So, any letter needs a way to greet whoever we're writing to and get to the point as soon as possible. In other words, say why you're writing your letter straight away. So, how do you feel about these 2 alternatives to start off? A. Dear Mr. Jackson, how's it going? I just thought I'd write a few words about that young guy who moved in next door to me a few weeks back. Well, he plays his horrible rock music until 2 or 3 a.m. and I can't stand that. Now, extract B. Dear Mr. Jackson, I hope you're well. As the owner of Flat 24, I am writing to you to complain about the behavior of the tenant of Flat 25, my immediate next-door neighbor. Since he moved in last month, my nights have been disturbed by the incessant loud music coming from his flat from around 10 p.m. until the early hours of the following morning. Which of the two has the correct tone? Which has the more formal vocabulary and grammar? It's B. Let's discuss why. Have a look at what elements give this formal or informal tone so you know how to control them. Option A, how is it going? Option B, I hope you're well. These are two common phrases to open your letters. One is informal, the second is formal. I hope you're well is extremely common in English. I just thought I'd write a few words. Again, this is informal. I just thought I'd write a few words. The formal version is I am writing to you to, in this case, to complain, but you can say to request information, to inform you, or something else. I am writing to you. Great for formal letters. In the next sentence, we have, as the owner of flat 24, and then we have the subject and verb of the sentence. So this phrase comes before the subject at the very beginning. So that's something that is common for the formal writing style. Young guy who moved in next door. The word guy is very informal. The formal alternative is the tenant of flat 25, my immediate next door neighbor. Notice how the formal vocabulary is more precise. So it helps you to push your vocabulary score up as well. Next, horrible rock music. Horrible is your personal emotional reaction, which is informal. Incessant loud music. Incessant means never stopping. So it's more factual, more formal. Next, I can't stand that. That's a personal, informal reaction. My nights have been disturbed. That's more formal. And here we had a chance to use a more complex grammatical structure, the present perfect passive. And generally, the passive voice is more formal than the active voice. Also, notice how version A includes several contractions, something characteristic of more informal writing styles. In a formal letter, you should not use contractions. And now on to the problems this has caused the writer. A. The noise has affected us all very badly, especially our two young school-age children, as it is almost impossible for any of us to sleep either sufficiently or peacefully. Or B. None of us can get to sleep, and that's really bad for our young kids who have school in the morning, and for us too, because we go to work. What do you think? Both versions cover the essentials, but of course it's A that reads more formally. Why? Well, compare these. Young school-age children versus young kids. The noun kids is informal, children is neutral. And again, in the formal version, we added some detail, school-age children. And in the next sentence of the formal version, we have the noise placed at the beginning as the subject. The noise has affected us all. It reads more formally than none of us can get to sleep. Next, sleep either sufficiently or peacefully versus kids who have school in the morning and for us too because we go to work. In the first version, the vocabulary is very precise and less common. Sleep sufficiently and peacefully. The second version is very simple and it sounds informal because it's so simple. Now, as for suggested solutions, which do you prefer? A. You must write a letter now telling this man to stop making this noise. And if he doesn't do anything, then you should really call the police. B. Might I suggest that a letter be sent to this tenant and to the owner of the flat, reminding them of the rules regarding noise as agreed at the general meeting of proprietors and tenants held last year? What do you think? Well, option A is far too direct. You must write. You should really call the police. These are very direct commands, which are quite rude. Compare them to the version B, which uses a very polite question. Might I suggest? And the letter be sent is the passive voice, a very formal construction. And now to sign off. Ending a letter well is important. Which version, A or B, uses a classic expression to end a formal letter? A. I look forward to your comments on this matter. Yours sincerely, Alex. B. Please do something about this. All the best, Alex. Which one is more formal? It's option A. Here we used a very common and formal structure. I look forward to please do something is informal. Then yours sincerely. Again, this is a very common way to finish a formal letter when you know the name of the person you're writing to. All the best is very friendly but quite informal. Actually, in English, when we write letters, we use a lot of typical phrases like I'm writing to or look forward to hearing back from you. And learning them can help you. Students who take my courses get a PDF list of formal and informal phrases for each situation, request, invitation, or advice, so they can compare which phrases are formal and which are informal. For free, you can download a PDF list with some formal phrases. I'll link both in the description. When you're writing a letter, read the task carefully. Decide if the letter is formal, semi-formal, or informal, and keep strictly to the bullet points. Check your opening and endings, making sure they match the tone. The abstracts you've seen so far were from a formal letter. Now let's have a look at a full informal letter and see how the tone changes. Here is the task. You have just won 2 tickets to a concert and want to invite your friend to go with you. Write a letter to your friend. In your letter, give details about the concert. Describe how you won the tickets. Explain why you've chosen your friend to go with you. Inviting or replying to an invitation is typical of the informal letter type. The structure is the same. From the greeting to the 3 bullet points to the signing off. But the informal tone of the letter will affect the words and expressions we use, and the grammar too. Let's have a look. Dear Maria. We are writing to a friend, so we use the first name, and don't forget to put a comma. Dear Maria, comma. Now the first bullet point. Give details about the concert. What are you doing Saturday next week? I'll tell you what you're doing. Notice the way the invitation is made. It's very direct. I'll tell you. This direct expression can either be quite friendly and playful in informal letters or quite rude if you use it in formal letters. You're coming with me to see Taylor Swift in London. You're coming. This is the present continuous tense to talk about the future. This means we're talking about a plan we've already made. So you've already made plans for your friend. You're coming with me. There is no would you like to come, which would be much more reserved. I know that we don't get to see each other as much as we'd like. What's not surprising with work and family, but wouldn't it be great to get away from all that for a day? So here we're using informal expressions and some phrasal verbs which are also quite informal. Get to see each other, get away from all that. The show starts at 8 p.m., but we can get there early, have lunch, and do some sightseeing. Now, the second bullet point. Describe how you won the tickets. And the second body paragraph of your letter. Now, believe it or not, I won the 2 tickets at work. In your letter, you should write several sentences about each bullet point Even if you can answer it, cover the bullet point in just one sentence. Make your body paragraphs of about equal length. It was our company's 10th anniversary party, and we all took part in this raffle. So, a raffle is the way to raise money for a project or a charity. All the people buy tickets, some win prizes, and the rest of the money goes to the cause. This is an example of less common vocabulary which you can use in your letter to push your vocabulary score up. You can imagine how I felt when the boss read out my name as the winner of the concert tickets. I think it's the first time in my life I've ever won anything. The present perfect tense, some variety. And now the third bullet point. Explain why you've chosen your friend to go with you. The moment I held the tickets in my hand, I thought of you. Remember when we were at school and we listened to her all the time? So, this is a very informal sentence. Remember instead of do you remember? We knew the lyrics to all her songs. Again, some topic-specific vocabulary. It's gonna be so great to see her live. I can't wait. See you soon. An informal ending, Helen. The letter has a clear, coherent structure with each paragraph describing one bullet point. The vocabulary is appropriate with good use of collocations and expressions such as don't get to see each other as much as we'd like. Would be great to get away from all that for a day. Do some sightseeing. Took part in this raffle. The grammar is varied but also appropriate for the situation. We typically talk to our close friends quite simply. The letter is full of short forms. It's all typical of informal letter writing. Remember that task 1 is only worth 1/3 or 33% of the total writing score. Task 2 weighs 2/3. That's why you should spend not more than 20 minutes on task 1 and say 40 minutes for task 2. By the way, if you prefer to start with task 2, you can totally do that. This letter is very different in tone to the formal letter we discussed before, right? Now, what about semi-formal letters? These are often letters you write to someone you've met or work with but who's not a friend. For example, you've just moved into a new home and are planning to hold a party. You're worried that the noise may disturb your neighbor. Write a letter to your neighbor. In your letter, introduce yourself, describe your plans for the party, invite your neighbor to come. A little trickier? Finding the right tone between being very formal and informally friendly is not easy. Here, it's reasonable to assume that you've seen your neighbor but don't know him or her well. The tone will be semi-formal. Not as formal as when you're writing to a business or a building manager, but not as informal as when you're writing to a friend. And don't forget that you're free to invent in these letters. Our examples so far are full of inventions, from school-age children to school days listening to Taylor Swift. So let's invent a little more here. Dear neighbor, my name is John Davis, and my family and I recently moved into the house next door to yours. We relocated from Geneva to London for my work. We're excited about joining the community, and our daughter is eagerly anticipating the upcoming school year. The tone is friendly but respectful. We wouldn't say, I know what you're doing next weekend, like we wrote to our friend before, or you must come to our party. Remember that the tone of the letter may also vary depending on the story you invent. Do you say that you're a student having a party and you're inviting another young person? Or do you invent a neighbor who's quite senior, maybe retired? This will affect the tone, right? Your personality also affects it, as some people prefer to be more formal than others. Make sure your tone is consistent throughout the letter, that you don't switch from quite formal to quite informal, because this will definitely be seen as a negative sign. The key to success in general training writing task 1 is first to clearly understand the importance of task achievement. It's a matter of getting our message across as clearly as possible. To do that, you need to follow the bullet points, make sure your ideas are relevant and your tone is right, and take care of how you open and close the letter. Are you still there? If you're listening to me now, please comment "I'm a star," because you are. You're clearly taking your preparation very seriously, and I wish you every luck in your test. Thank you so much for watching me today. Bye!